Hey everybody, and welcome to PagerDuty 201. My name's Hannah Lodice, and I'm a technical trainer here on the PagerDuty University team, and I'll be taking you through this next hour talking about some additional capabilities that you have access to within the PagerDuty platform to really level up your incident response process. I do recommend completing PagerDuty 101 training or webinar prior to this specific session that you're going to go through, or have a general understanding and experience working within the PagerDuty platform. Now, as I mentioned, my name is Hannah and I'll be your trainer today. I've been with PagerDuty for a number of years, beginning on our support team, going on call in PagerDuty, and working with thousands of different customers. So I'm very excited to be showing you some of these advanced features that you'll have access to. Now, my goal by the end of the session is that you're going to be able to perform the following actions. You'll be able to effectively communicate with your stakeholders across your organization. You'll be able to understand how to use our powerful event orchestrations to automate a lot of manual actions that happen prior to your incidents triggering. And finally, you'll be able to leverage workflows to automate actions once an incident does trigger. So there's really four key areas that we're going to take a look at today. Creating service dependency relationships, using the PagerDuty status dashboard and sending out stakeholder notifications, leveraging PagerDuty orchestrations, and finally, running incident workflows, and then seeing how these all work together with a real incident. So let's go ahead and jump in a little bit closer. I wanted to start by taking a look at some of the examples of tools that power your digital operations. PagerDuty can connect with over 750 out-of-the-box integrations. So if you're not seeing your tool listed here, no worries. We probably do have an integration set up for it. Now, each of these tools provides rich data about your environment, but they do so through a siloed lens that doesn't always tell the full story. Maybe you're getting change data from your software deployment tools, alert data from monitoring and observability tools, event and dependency data from operations tools, and even telemetry from your cloud environments. PagerDuty can ingest and contextualize these signals and leverage machine learning to filter out the noise and orchestrate the appropriate response, whether it's automated or human response. Now, we use a service-based architecture that makes it easy to identify which service owners are appropriate for each service. But how can we ensure that when incidents do arise, when those problems do occur, we clearly and effectively communicate issues with the right stakeholders, our executives, our CEOs that need to understand when things are going wrong? So we'll start today by taking a look and making sure we've correctly set up both our business and technical services in PagerDuty. You might not know, but there's two different kinds of services within the PagerDuty platform. Your technical services, where your integrations are connected, where incidents are triggering, where folks are going on call, and business services that represent those overarching capabilities or services that you provide your customers. Now, quickly taking a look at this diagram, you'll see that these different services can have different dependency relationships. Business services are meant to help make the communication process with your stakeholders much easier. There's usually many technical services on the back end that might be named with lots of team-specific jargon that helps support those business services. But these business services are here to make it so that when there are updates that you need to make, you can automatically show the health and status in the way that folks on other teams can understand. Now, I like to give the example of what we use here at PagerDuty. If you haven't already done so, I do highly recommend downloading our PagerDuty mobile app. It's available to you via the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And with our mobile app, you can manage your incidents. You can respond to incidents. You can manage your on-call schedules. You can even download that PagerDuty contact card. Our mobile app is a business service here at PagerDuty, something that we keep an eye on, a service that we provide our customers. However, there's lots of different technical services within our platform that support the operation of our mobile app. So we have those technical services created that support that overarching mobile app business service. Now, let's jump into PagerDuty and see how we would set these up. I've logged in to my PagerDuty environment and I've landed on my incident dashboard. This is where I can see a high-level overview of everything that's currently ongoing across my environment. Hovering over the Services tab, I'm able to check out my service directory where my technical services live, as well as my business services list, where I can see all of those overarching capabilities that my organization provides. So let's assume that we already have our technical service set up, we have those incidents triggering, and folks are being notified about them. But now we want to make it so that anybody across our organization can understand if that application that we're supporting is having an issue or not. For that, we would create a business service to keep an eye on. So taking a look at some of these incidents, I see that I have a service related to my app liveness, and I want to go ahead and connect this to that overarching mobile app. I'll hover over this Services tab, this time selecting Business Services from the dropdown. Here, I can see all of these different capabilities that have been created and supported using these business services. Now, I can click into one of these business services and start setting up a relationship, but for now, we'll go ahead and create a new business service. The first thing I want to do is give my business service a name. So we'll go ahead and call this my alpha application, as perhaps this is an application or something related to a larger capability. Maybe if you are somebody who is creating video games, for example, you might include the name of a video game here. If you are working with different geographies, you might have West services versus East services. Lots of different ways that you might set up your business services. So once my name is in place, I can go ahead and delineate an owner. This is a free-form field, and associate it to a corresponding team within my PagerDuty account. Further, I can add an optional description of exactly what this business service is responsible for. With those different pieces in place, again, they're all optional, we can now navigate down to our business and technical service dependencies. Here, I can add some different technical services that support my overarching Alpha application business service. So here I might go in and select my app liveness service, app performance service, maybe even authorization failures. I can go ahead and start adding that list of technical services here. These are all going to be supporting services. Further, I can even add other business services that might help support this application as well. Now, with my technical services in place, I'll go ahead and create this business service. I don't see any impacting incidents right now, but I can see those service dependencies listed. Now, this is the first step I'll really want to take if I'm planning on using those effective stakeholder communications. Having these service dependencies and relationships identified makes communication that much easier. You're also going to see that once you start to create your business and technical service dependencies, you'll be able to view them on our service graph. You can do so by clicking this link, but I'll also show you another way to access your service graph, and that's via your Services tab in the navbar and selecting Service Graph from the dropdown. Once you do so, you're going to see an interactive web and the holistic mapping of all of your different services and how they relate to one another. You can think about your service graph as a living, breathing asset. It's going to codify all those relationships and facilitate cross-team collaboration for faster resolution times. So here, I'm able to see that corresponding business service that I've created, as well as the different technical services that support that and how it relates to other functions of my business. It's really easy to continue to add to your service graph if there are any other dependency relationships you'd like to create. You can simply click on the node and drag a line to that corresponding service you want to create a dependency relationship for. Or you can pop out the item here on the right. Oh, there we go. Pop out services without dependencies. Select a service that you would like to add to your map, drag it onto the map, and then go ahead and start drawing those relational lines. Once you do so, you'll see that that dependency relationship has been created, and you can do the same for your business services as well. Now, if they are in fact not related, you can easily disconnect your services here just by selecting disconnect. So at this point, if you're following along with me, I do have a checkpoint activity for you. If you've created technical and business services, I now invite you to start connecting those services on the service graph map. Drag a technical service onto the map, drag a business service onto the map, and draw that relational line. I'll pause here, and now's a good time to pause in the recording as well if you would like to go ahead and take that activity. All right, so at this point in our webinar so far, we've gone in and discussed different service dependencies. So we now have a better understanding of how our different technical services work together. We're one step closer to making sure that if we do need to send out those status updates to our stakeholders or keep other teams in the loop, it's much easier to do so because they understand what we're supporting. But now, let's see how we can use the PagerDuty status dashboard and some templates so that we can make communication even easier. Now, we'll start with the status dashboard here in PagerDuty. When any incidents occur, any non-technical stakeholders are going to be able to view their status and the status of those supporting business services via the status dashboard. Now, here at PagerDuty, we've been optimizing our incident resolution process for over a decade at this point. And after all these years of iteration, we've come to the conclusion that optimizing the processes behind how incidents are handled is just as important as resolving the technical issues that caused them in the first place. So, your status dashboard is going to provide your stakeholders, your technical responders, your leaders, a live shared view of the system health. It's going to display the current status of your business services and improve communication across teams. Remember, your internal stakeholders, for the most part, are really not so interested in the long story of how your systems went down and what methods you're using to fight fire. They're mainly interested in a couple of key pieces of information. How severe is the outage? What's the likely duration? What's being done? When can we expect another update? So having this information clearly defined on your status dashboard will help everybody do their jobs. Here in PagerDuty, you can access your status dashboard by hovering over the status option and then selecting internal status page. Now, right now, I'm seeing that my business services are operational as I don't have an incident triggered with an associated priority. It is really important to note that in order for your business services to appear impacted, those corresponding incidents must have an associated priority. And we'll take a look at how to automate that action here in just a few moments. But if there were any business impacting incidents, our status dashboard would appear impacted. So now that we understand how that status dashboard can really help visibility and communication, we'll start taking a closer look at building out some reusable templates. Now, during incident response, a lot of people need to be informed about how an incident is progressing. Your executives, your customer support team, your sales team, your marketing team. But communicating these updates regularly can be pretty toilsome. Communications aren't always standardized and don't always allow those first responders to format information in a way that's going to be most valuable to stakeholders. So, crafting some templates prior to incidents triggering or proactively making these is going to help make sure that your response team has some internal communications with less toil and less complexity. Back in PagerDuty, we'll want to start going in and setting up some of these different templates. We'll hover over the Incidents tab, and then we'll select Status Update Templates. Here, we have a couple predefined templates that I've already set up. Templates for my responders to use if there's an incident with customer impact, if there's a P2 incident. You might use these to share communication when an incident began, when you want information about how to join a bridge, etc. So I'll go in and create a new template for today. And I'm going to create this template specifically for when we've moved from the investigation phase of our incident response to the identification phase of incident response. So once I have this clear description in place, I'll go in and create my template. Now I see some variables that I can include here on the right, a free-form message field, as well as an email template. Now, sometimes making communication templates feels a little bit tricky because we don't know all of those incident details in advance. Every incident is different. So for those unknowable details, you can use these variables here on the right side of the page to share information about when the incident began, how those business services are impacting, if you have any known customer impact, etc. Further, in your template, you might even include some links to incident details, links to internal status pages, or again, information about how to join a bridge. But I'll go in and start implementing my brief message here. Now, again, this is going to be available for my responders to click and send, but they can always go in and add some additional details as well. We've tried to make it easy for you here at PagerDuty to include some of that most relevant information using the variables that I've spoken about. You can also go in and update your branding here as well if you want to make this so that it's more relevant to your organization. So now that I have this template, I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I want to use this later on as we're walking through a incident in PagerDuty and when I might go in and use this for my next update for my stakeholders. But at this point, we've gone through two big pieces. We've created those service dependency relationships and understand how that status dashboard is going to communicate that impact effectively. Now that we've discussed that, I now want to show you some decisions that you can make using orchestrations to automatically associate priorities or help those responders with those initial steps that they would take if an incident does trigger. So with that, we'll take a closer look at service orchestrations here at PagerDuty. This is a relatively new feature, and if you've used event rules in the past, you'll want to start heading on over and moving to service orchestrations. Orchestration is a really powerful tool. It takes all the data from your monitoring tools and the scripts that your teams use for triage, applied logic and automation to determine the next best action for your events as they're ingested. You can create rules that extract priority. You can have another rule that follows immediately after, whose conditions are based on that priority to take another action, and continue again and again and again, however many times that you want. So I'm going to head back over once again to my main PagerDuty incident dashboard. And I've noticed I've triggered this incident on my app liveness service. It's a health check failure. And let's say for incidents like this, I always complete the same first actions. I always associate a priority, I always add a note, etc. Well, I want to stop taking those manual actions, and I want PagerDuty to do that on my behalf proactively before that incident triggers the next time. So I'll head on over to my app liveness service and start to update my service orchestrations. Jumping into my service settings and scrolling down the page, I now see the option to start creating my service orchestration rules. So I'll go ahead and click this option, and I land here with a blank template. First thing I'll want to do is go in and set up a new rule. And with my new rule, I need to set some conditions. Luckily, I see some examples here on the right of the 5 most recent events that have reached my service and triggered an incident. I see a Biodex health check failure, an Alpha health check failure, etc., etc. Well, I know anything that includes health check failure in that summary should have the same first actions completed. So I can easily click into the summary of this recent event here and populate some conditions. You can use and statements or statements here if you want to target a couple different kinds of events. You can also look for matches or non-matches, or even use regex here if you prefer. But because I'm looking for anything that includes health check failure, I'll go ahead and update that summary here and now click in the next button to determine the actions I want to happen. Now I have lots of different choices here. Some of these will be dependent upon the pricing plan that you have within your PagerDuty account. I can update my incident data, my alert data, or even trigger some webhooks. Now, this first option, incident data, lets me suppress the incident if it's just noise or even pause notifications. But I'm going to choose to leave this incident as is, but take additional actions instead. So the first thing I'll want to do is set my priority. Let's say these health check failures are P2 incidents. Next, I want to add a note here, giving some responders additional troubleshooting steps. You could add links here as well. If you have specific wikis that you want to add, you can directly link those to your incident as well. Further, you can update the alert data if you want to update the severity of your incident to determine how responders are notified. And you can even use custom transformations if you want to update any of the fields within that incident. Finally, one of the coolest parts of orchestrations is triggering webhooks to specified endpoints. If you're always restarting your server, if you're always reverting last commit, things of that nature, you can automatically enable those webhooks right here in your orchestration. Now, I'll go ahead and save that rule. This means that anytime a health check failure has been found by PagerDuty, we're going to go ahead and update that priority, add a note to that incident, and set the severity to critical. I can continue to build out rules here if there are further actions that should take place for specific events, or create else rules here as well if there's completely different events that I want to target and take different kinds of actions with. As I mentioned, orchestration is very powerful, so I highly recommend implementing these manual actions right here in your orchestrations so that you don't have to go in and do it every time a new incident triggers. This is just a teaser. I am excited to hear about some of the different ways that you choose to leverage event orchestration, but right now I have another activity for you. You can go ahead and pause the recording. You'll want to make sure that you've turned on your service orchestrations. You can create a new rule, identify the conditions that must be met in order for your rule to run, and then determine the event actions that should take place, just like you saw me do previously. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to pause the recording and complete that checkpoint activity, as we have one more activity to work through today, and that is running incident workflows. We've done a lot of proactive actions here. We've created those service dependency relationships. We understand how to use the status dashboard, and we're ready for those incidents to come in and leverage orchestrations to take some of those manual actions out of the process. But once an incident does occur, what extra actions do we want to happen? Do we want to loop in additional people for help? Do we want to send out those status updates automatically to our stakeholders? Do we need to spin up a conference bridge or spin up a Slack channel? All of those things you can do with incident workflows. So let's go ahead and jump back here into PagerDuty and we'll start setting up some workflows. You may have heard of these referred to as response plays in the past, and you might have even used response plays. But incident workflows are a much powerful new feature that allow you to complete additional if that, then this logic. You'll access these from the automation menu and then select incident workflows from the dropdown. Here I have some workflows that I've already set up. Some of these I'll use for different kinds of incidents, maybe P1 incidents or P2 incidents. But maybe I want to set up a workflow once we reach that investigation stage. A new incident has triggered, and we're really just trying to dive in and understand what is going on. And I want to be able to give my responders the ability to just push a button and mobilize all the right people. So for this, I'll go in and create a new workflow. First thing I'll want to do is give it a name. When you're creating your workflows, it is pretty important to make sure that you have a description of exactly what that workflow does. We don't want to be presented with this big red button that we can press, but not know what the button does. You might add additional details here in your description based upon specific teams that you're mobilizing, etc. With that, I'll go in and create my workflow. And there's really two parts here: triggers and actions. Triggers determine when your workflow should run, and you have some choices here. You can trigger it automatically based on some specific conditions, or you can simply have that button available so that responders can manually run your workflow. If you do choose to use a conditional trigger, you'll select conditions very similarly to those event orchestrations. What is PagerDuty going to look for in order to know that this workflow needs to start? Here, you can select some specific conditions like the priority has its specific value, the status, or the urgency has a specific value. Knowing that I went in and made those health check failures P2 incidents, I might go in and say, anytime a P2 incident is triggered, then I want this workflow to start. You can continue to build out further conditions too if you want to use and or statements. Next, you'll want to make sure that you determine which services this specific trigger applies to. All services means, well, any service with a P2 incident is going to have this workflow run. So I'll apply this just to specific services that should use this workflow. And once I do so, I click Save. Keep in mind, you do also have the ability to set up manual triggers as well, determining exactly which responders can press this button when the time is right. Next, we need to determine the actions that should take place when this workflow is run. Why are we setting this up? Who needs to be involved? What do we need to do? Clicking Add Action here, I see a couple different choices. First thing I might want to do is add a conference bridge number. This way, everybody knows exactly which bridge to join so that we can triage faster. I have a predefined URL that I'll go ahead and implement in here and then click Save. With my conference bridge in place, now I might want to loop in some different escalation policies as responders. If this were a major incident, perhaps I'd loop in the help of my incident commander, a scribe, an SME, a liaison, etc., or even specific teams that might be able to help with that additional investigation. We have a templated message that you can use, but of course you can use some additional variables in your message as well. So I have my conference bridge in place. I have those different responders included. Maybe I want to include a Slack channel as well. And I want to create a new Slack channel specifically for this incident. I'll choose my workplace name. I can update that channel name and then simply save. Now, we've been talking a lot about communication and making sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to the status of our incidents. So we definitely don't want to forget about our stakeholders here. For incidents of this nature, perhaps we go in and add specific teams as stakeholders or subscribe them to this incident. I have a predefined team of stakeholders I'd like to use here. Maybe you do too, or maybe there's just specific folks that need to be informed about this. This can also be other response teams that just need to know the status of this kind of incident. And finally, I can go in and create a specific message or send that status update to those stakeholders. And with that message in place, I go ahead and click Save. Now I have all these actions that should take place as soon as a P2 incident is triggered on one of my corresponding services. Before I leave the page, I want to go ahead and publish this. That means we can go ahead and put it in use. All right, so at this point, we've gone through 4 key concepts for really up-leveling your use of PagerDuty. You've created service dependency relationships. You understand how to use the status dashboard, leverage orchestrations for those actions you want to happen before that incident is triggered, and know how to run incident workflows for those post trigger incident actions. I think it's time for us to see it all work together. So, back to that main PagerDuty dashboard, I have a couple incidents in here. I'll go ahead and simply resolve these so we're back to normal. And this time, I'm going to go ahead and trigger some incidents. Now I'll go ahead and reload, and I'm going to see I have a health check failure that has been triggered here. This one is automatically coming in as a P2 incident. When I click into this incident, I see that that corresponding priority has been identified and my user, Juno, is already receiving notifications. But there's a lot more that's going on here as well. Taking a look at my incident timeline, I'm able to see that this incident workflow began because of that conditional trigger that I've set up for that P2 incident. I can see the corresponding responders were requested for this particular incident. I can see a Slack channel was already spun up. And taking a look at my status updates here, I can see that my team has been subscribed and a status update has been sent. So less than a minute, now 1 minute has gone by, and I've already mobilized the right team and kept everybody in the loop. Now we can all jump on the conference bridge together and work to resolve this incident. Further, if we take a look at our status page, we're going to be able to see which of our business services is impacted by the incident on that corresponding technical service. This alpha application that I created earlier was supported by that app liveness service. So this incident is impacting that overarching business service. Now I'll go back and click into my incident. Let's say I've joined my team here. We're all on a bridge together. I'll go ahead and acknowledge this first, most importantly, but we're all on the bridge together. We're working to resolve this incident, and we've actually gone in and we've identified what the problem is. So we want to send another update to our stakeholders, another update to other teams, letting them know that we've reached the next phase of our investigation. This is where we can start to use those templates. I'll head on over to my Status Updates tab once again, this time selecting New Update. Once I do so, I get to select the different communication template that I would like to use. I could use PagerDuty's default template, but I know that my manager has set up specific templates for these kinds of communications. So I'll click into that template, I can preview it, and if there is anything I need to add, I can go ahead and do so, but most of the hard work has already proactively been done. I can confirm that this looks good, and now I send out that update. So we'll be able to see that next status update listed here on our incident. I'm receiving some push notifications right now on my mobile device. And further, taking a look at my status dashboard, I can now see that newest status update that's been posted. Now, think back to how this process may have taken many minutes, many phone calls, many pings, many questions from folks wondering what in the world is going on. With everything I've showed you today, you can automate and streamline that process in order to quickly get down to the bottom of your issue and make sure the right people are informed at the right time. So, hopefully, now that we've reached the end of this training session, you have some key takeaways. You should know how to easily share the status of your ongoing incidents with your stakeholders by leveraging business and technical service dependencies, the status dashboard, and status update notification templates. You can use orchestration rules to determine the actions that need to be taken on certain incidents prior to a responder being notified, and use workflows to loop in the right people at the right time. I'm hoping that now that we've reached the end of the session, you can cut down on that time it takes for that mass confusion and chaos when it comes to those new incidents being triggered within your environment. But I do have some next steps for you. If you enjoyed this session or want to provide some feedback, please feel free to hover over that QR code and complete our post-session survey, letting us know how we can improve this session in the future. You can also learn more about everything I showed you today at university.pagerduty.com. This portal will give you access to over 30 different on-demand courses that are bite-sized that you can take at your own pace. You can learn more about workflows here, more about event orchestration, and even more about business and technical service dependencies. If you have any questions, please do feel free to check out our knowledge base at support.pagerduty.com, reach out to our support team, or reach out to us directly here at PDU using the address pdu@pagerduty.com. Now, thank you all for joining, and I hope you learned something new. Until next time, I'll see you later.